Welcome to Barnstable Today. I'm Nick Cortez.
Fiscal year 2012 Capital Improvement Program orders, all to be referred to a public hearing on April 7th, 2011. 2011-065, appropriation order $3,250,000 Capital Trust Fund to be appropriated for the purpose of funding the repair of the town's public roads and drainage system.
Those words from Councillor James Tinsley began the Town Council's annual task of considering and approving the town budget. As you just heard, last Thursday's meeting contained a first reading of appropriation requests that together comprise the fiscal year 2012 capital improvement budget. Funding for some 21 separate projects and programs has been requested for the upcoming fiscal year. The Council will hold public hearings on each item at its April 7th meeting. In other Town Council happenings, Community Services Director Lynn Poyant was on hand Thursday night to present to the Council the Massachusetts Recreation and Park Association's annual Design of Facility Award. The MRPA last week honored the HYCC as one of the finest recreational buildings in Massachusetts, and that's something that Poyant believes the entire town should be proud of.
Massachusetts Recreation and Park Association, they presented their annual state award for excellence in the field of design of facility to the Hyannis Youth and Community Center. And I think it was said that a camel is a horse built by committee, but the Hyannis Youth and Community Center is one of the successful committees that we have had. And it's because we had so much community input as we were going through the process, the number of public meetings that we had. So while the recreation staff, who truly deserved this, accepted it on behalf of the town yesterday, and it's my pleasure to give this to Town Council President Fred Cherigotis, I think that everyone in the town should revel in this award because I feel that it belongs to all of us. And so with the Council's permission, I would hope that this award would find its way back to the HYCC.
The Town Council also voted to accept a $2 million Mass Works infrastructure grant that will fund road improvements on Stephen Street and portions of High School Road in Hyannis. Here, Growth Management Director Joanne Miller-Buntage explains the grant program to the Council, along with some follow-up comments from Councillor John Norman.
The Public Works and Economic Development portion of the Mass Works infrastructure has a component to it. It's not just public works. It has to support a coherent and well-planned economic development strategy. And the reason that the town of Barnstable has been the recipient of these for many years running is because of the work that the council has done along with the town manager and the other town departments in creating that coherent economic development strategy in downtown Hyannis. This is the phase 3 of this project, which completes a series of gateway improvements, some by the state, the rest by the town, that begins at exit 6 when you come off the Mid-Cape Highway and now leads everybody right down to Main Street, Hyannis. We were pleased that Secretary Bielecki came down here before late last year to personally award the project. He thought it was well worth his time to come down. He likes what's happening in Hyannis, and he did share with us that the new way in which they're evaluating these grant applications put Hyannis head and shoulders above the other recipients, where had they not been using the new evaluation criteria, which looks at all of the work that towns are doing, we might not have been able to secure this grant.
No, I just think the number $2 million should really stand out, for people that are wondering, where their tax dollars are going. This is coming back directly into the community, and I respect what the manager says as far as this wasn't tagged to create jobs, but this is work. This is work that will generate income for people, generate jobs, local suppliers, things like that, and it's kudos to the staff. These grants are an enormous amount of paperwork, and there's an entire setup that has to be created. The criteria is very complex, and there's been a lot of vision that has allowed. $2 million is a lot of money, and very good job for the staff. They should be commended.
Next up, the Council voted to authorize the town manager to execute a regulatory agreement between the town and the Realty Trust managed by Hyannis Marina owner Wayne Kirker. The agreement would allow Kirker to use the old Puritan Pontiac building for boat storage and repairs, and would allow for numerous future uses of the remaining vacant space in exchange for rehabbing the now dormant building and property. Attorney Michael Ford represented Kirker at the meeting.
The Planning Board worked very hard with us, as did the Growth Management staff, to come up with this kind of creative approach to this particular use of the property. In the short term, it allows the building to be occupied rather than to sit there unoccupied, a large building in Hyannis. And as I said, principally by Mr. Kirker. Mr. Kirker's business is such that a great deal of the storage and repair of boats at this point needs to be done inside, and there is a shortage of space for that type of work. And in the short run, this building was an ideal location for Mr. Kirker to be able to move a portion of that business over there. And given the fact that it allows him to work on boats and store those boats in a portion of the building year-round, it actually will result in him being able to preserve certain jobs at the marina that he otherwise, frankly, given the economic conditions, could not keep on year-round. And he's estimated that to be at least 6 full-time positions where if he can get the work inside, schedule it through the winter, he'll be able to keep those on. So your planning board saw short-term benefits in phase 1 of this regulatory agreement, allowing Mr. Kirker to do that. In exchange for that, we worked with staff and the planning board to develop a comprehensive landscape plan for that site. That site desperately needs some landscaping, some cleanup. We had 2 public hearings before your planning board. Some of the neighbors came out. They, in fact, gave input which was later incorporated into the landscape plan, and it is that phase 1 landscape plan that has to be completed by Mr. Kirker by this June. So in exchange for the short-term use, the planning board negotiated, and this agreement so provides, that initial shot of landscaping would be done to the property. Secondly, and over the long term, there's a phase 2 to the regulatory agreement, as you probably saw if you had an opportunity to read through it. And that allows a number of other uses for the building, including retail, food service, continues to allow the prior use that was there, which was the automobile dealership, allows office and other uses in the OM district. In other words, it's very flexible. But there's a key to the town continuing to have control over those uses. Before a phase 2 use can be commenced, Mr. Kirker has to return to site plan review, growth management, and the planning board to show that that use will comply not only with the zoning bylaw and the terms of the regulatory agreement, but that any changes to the building and the site need to be brought into compliance with your design and infrastructure plan.
Finally, the council voted to resubmit a home rule petition to the State House of Representatives and the Senate, asking for special legislation to create a separate sewer construction fund consisting of all of the annual revenue from the local option meal and hotel taxes that the council adopted last year. Before the council voted in the affirmative on this item, Councillor James Crocker had some questions for Town Finance Director Mark Milne.
How much are you anticipating, since this is the only vehicle now to bring us money since the taxpayers turned down the other ways with which we were going to contribute? What are you anticipating annually? And since we started to collect this before we actually had our fund approved, can you tell us the mechanism of how it's set aside in reserve, appropriate reserve?
Sure.
Thank you.
On your first question, we anticipate about $1.7 million over a 12-month period between both taxes that we collect, about $1 million on the meals and $750,000 on the hotel tax. And currently, the mechanism is that it's general fund revenue, and we have it set up so that it goes into a separate, unique revenue account, so we can track it on an annual basis. It'll close out at the end of the year to general fund balance. If this special legislation is not authorized, however, we can track it and subsequently move it to the trust fund once it's approved, because we are tracking it separately.
Now, let's take a look at this week's meetings. Well, that's all for now. I'm Nick Cortez, and we'll see you next time on Barnstable Today.